So today we're going to talk about this class is called the buyer conversion class, and I had renamed it to how to convert buyers into side contracts. And what I wanted to do is kind of just break it down. So today we're going to talk about the 5 stages, and then next Tuesday we'll talk about the roles and expectations. And so I'm going to kind of go out of order a little bit from the materials, but let me get that over to you guys too here, because I really want to just kind of talk about the importance of doing a buyer consultation. And I see agents running around not doing consultations. They'll pick up a buyer, and then they show them a house here, show them a house there, and then they don't understand when the buyer doesn't commit to them, and they go somewhere else and buy a house with a different agent. Let's see, Chris, let's get you guys the materials. Jan, I don't know why you are still not showing up in my email.
I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
We've had a lot of technical problems.
What's your email, Jan?
It's jan607@gmail.com, or if you want to use the Remax one, Jan.Stevens.
I got you. Okay. So you guys know that in about I think it's about 5 days from now, and I think it's April 17th is the day that the MLS is going to start showing co-broke. And so co-broke meaning that they're going to be able to see the commission that you as the agent are going to get paid. And so I think one of the reasons I wanted to kind of deep dive into this class material is because I feel like there's going to be some challenges with that, right? Now that that's going to become public information. And if we aren't doing a good enough job as the buyer's agent to demonstrate our value to that person, they're going to start questioning, why are you getting paid that much money, right? And I also think there's going to be opportunities, just like when we go on a listing appointment and a seller wants you to discount, I think there's going to be buyers that are going to say that as well. They're going to want to get in your pocket and say, hey, will you help me with my closing costs? Will you help me buy down my loan because interest rates went up, right? So having a really strong, polished buyer presentation reduces the risk that comes along with working with buyers. And it takes on average about 5 to 6 hours to do a listing. So you get the listing, run the comps, go on the appointment, et cetera, et cetera. It takes between 25 and 30 hours to work a buyer. And so that probably with some buyers might even be a higher number just because of the inventory issues that we're having and people having to write multiple offers. And so having a really strong presentation that you do every single time with every single buyer. I will tell you, in my 25 years of doing this, the few times that I had really, really, really awful transactions were when I deviated from my process, right? I didn't do my buyer consultation and the deals didn't close and they were really, really difficult transactions. And worse, I didn't get paid, right? And so having that system reduces the risk. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about what are the 5 stages of working with buyers. So first thing, obviously, we want to teach you guys how to have a purpose, right? What's your intentional, proactive, focused approach, right? So having that systemized plan. And again, we talk about McDonald's, and you go to McDonald's and they know that if they put the right amount of ice in there and hit the button, they're not going to have overage or spillage, right? Or spillage or less in the cup. And so having this is the same kind of thing. We'll do this over and over again for our buyers. I want you guys to feel more confident, right? Working with your buyers, serious buyers, and then increasing our transactions, which is always a good thing. So how do we do that? So we want to talk about open houses. I sat through a webinar last week, and I heard a statistic that said 54% of people who go through an open house will buy a home. And so she was talking about how they do that. They create a Facebook page for the property that they're sitting open, and they push that out and they can boost it and they invite people to the page. And then of course, when the house sells, you delete it. They also door knock on local businesses, schools, and churches, which I'm an advocate of door knocking 10-10-20, right? Which is 10 houses on either side, 20 across the street. But I'd never thought about businesses, churches, and schools. And so inviting those folks to come to the open house, taking a flyer and saying, hey, we're doing an open house. Do you know anybody who wants to move into this neighborhood? I thought that was really, really smart. So turning that home or the open house into an event, right? So talking about open houses, your network or sphere of influence, top 50, and of course, farming an area. So we want to talk about new business, repeat, referral. And today we are focused on buyers. In a couple of weeks, we will be doing the same thing, focusing on sellers. And so having the same kind of process with breaking that down and having a strong listing presentation. So first, though, let's talk about the financial security of someone who's an effective converter. And so it doesn't do us any good, right? We can generate the leads, but if we don't know what to say when we get the leads, then that's a problem, right? And so a lot of people struggle with having the confidence, and as through any momentum class, they're chocked full of all kinds of scripts and dialogues, which we won't read through all of them, but I will touch on them as we go through the class materials. So we have 45 weeks, assuming that we're going to take some vacation time. If you were to set one appointment per week, that's 45 appointments per year. And if only half of those people showed up, that would give you an additional 23 appointments. And if you only were able to convert 50% of those, which I think a lot of us, once we get face-to-face, have a higher conversion, right? And again, these are assuming that these are leads that don't know you. Right. So these are people that don't know you already that have been referred to you. So that would give us an additional 12 clients. And if only 75% of those people were successful in closing, that'd be an additional 9 transactions. And you can see as you progress as an agent and you get more longevity, how that increases. Right. And so if you think about what's the average sales price right now, it's hovering around 450. Let's just do some quick math. 450 at an average commission of 2.75. That's 12,003. Oops, I added a 0 times 9. So it's about $112,000 in GCI just by knowing what to say and having the right scripts and dialogues and being an effective converter. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good day, right? To pretty good income for the year. So what do we need to have? So we need to, what do we know? What do we need to know, do, and have? So we need to know how to convert, right? And again, practicing our scripts and dialogues. I know it's not sexy. I know it's kind of uncomfortable, right, to practice scripts and dialogues. But if we don't do it, what's the consequence of that? We miss out on opportunities, right? I used to go to Toastmasters. When I decided I wanted to speak publicly, I joined Toastmasters. And my favorite thing that I learned from Toastmasters was the impromptu speaking. And so they have a Toastmaster for the night, right? And they get up and they ask a question, and they usually have some kind of little history lesson around it. And then they ask a question, but you don't know what the question is going to be, and you don't know who they're going to call on. And so it could be your night, right? And you don't have to answer the question, but you do have to use the word of the day, and you have to get the word of the day in there. Otherwise, you don't qualify for winning the Toastmaster of the night. And so the impromptu speaking. So what I liked about that was it made me quick on my toes, because you never knew when you were going to get asked the question, and you had to be creative, because sometimes that word of the day had absolutely nothing to do with the topic. And so you had to figure out how to slide that in there. And so for me, it really related back to scripts and dialogues and being in situations where I had to overcome an objection and being able to be quick on my feet and think quickly, right? And so that's the same thing with practicing our scripts and dialogues. If we practice them over and over again, when we are in those situations, we come across so much more polished and smooth. And I think it's also okay to say you don't know, right? Especially when we're new. It's okay to say, Monica, I don't honestly have the answer right now, but I will get back to you and we will have a discussion about it. That takes a lot of courage when you're new, because you're like, oh my gosh, I should know everything, right? But it's okay to say you don't know. So the dialogues you guys are going to get in here, you get your meeting, your showing, your closing, your justification, and how to deal with lowball offers, which hopefully you're not dealing with that too much with buyers right now. So what do we need to have? So we need to have a criteria sheet, which we're going to give you in the materials. Next week, we're going to focus in on the roles and expectations. We're going to touch on how to get there's a script in here on how to get a buyer representation agreement signed. You need your contract, right? And then any additional forms, letterhead, and note cards. And there are some sample thank you notes and not working with you note cards, or not going to work with you examples inside of the materials. But before we do that, as with any momentum class, let's talk about our mindset. So our core values. So this is not, you guys have seen this before, right? If you've been coming to classes, because they show up often because they're critical. Our mindset is everything, especially in this market. You're working with buyers. I saw a funny video last week, and there was this agent, it was like 2016. We have an offer. Oh, we're going to come in 30,000 low, and your house needs a new roof, and we want to sell it at closing costs. Okay, great. You're agreeable to that. Okay, we'll send the offer over. And then the next slide was today's market. She's got her makeup running. She's got a bottle of booze, and she's going through the whole thing saying, we're prepared to offer X, so 30,000 over. And then at the end she goes, and they're willing to give their firstborn child. Oh, you've already been offered that? So, it was an extreme exaggeration, right? But not too far off as far as like the 30,000 over asking, right? And so our mindset is everything. And this market is challenging for buyers. And so the core beliefs, right? So my personal favorite is I live in a world of abundance. That is something that just a core value that I have personally, and it transcends all areas of life, right? And then number 5, it's unacceptable for my business to earn $0. I think I would put in that's unacceptable for my business to earn less than what your goal is, right? What is your financial goal? The more time you can spend focusing on that, right? And looking at your pipeline. I had this conversation with someone yesterday. They don't have their leads in one focused place. And I said, how do you know what you have on the horizon if you don't have everything in one place? If I have everything in one place, I can quickly look at that and say, I know what my pipeline looks like for the next 30, 60, 90 days and how that applies to my goals. We're at the end of Q1. It's a good time to take a look at that and say, am I on track? Do I need to double down? Do I need to, do I need to do something different? Right. And so it's important to study that stuff. And the more often that you are intimate with your goals, the more likely that they're going to come to fruition. Number 7, I will not convert 100% of the leads I do not generate. You guys have heard me talk about this, right? You should not get out of bed in the morning and wonder who needs your services. And we need to focus in on our seed leads. Our seed leads are important. Our seed leads fill our pipeline, right? We're always so focused on the A, but the A is done, right? The A is in the bag, right? They're the deal of yesterday. We need to focus in on the B's and C's because those are the ones that fill our pipeline, right? And sometimes those C's become A's, right? Because things change. And so we definitely want to love on our C leads because again, they fill the pipeline. Let's see what else. If they won't meet me, they're not a buyer. Now, this is talking specifically about having a buyer consultation. And I agree with this. Now, have I been a Pop-Tart realtor, meaning that the phone rings and I pop up and I go show a house? Absolutely. And have I made money from that? Absolutely. So you have to discern, you have to ask the right questions and discern whether or not this person is legitimate and asking the right questions when you're screening the call. Sometimes if it's your listing, you got to go show it because that's what you got to do for your seller, right? To get feedback for your seller. However, I mean, I can think about my nephew just turned 21. In the morning, I was driving to his birth because he had a scheduled birth. When I was driving, I got a sign call. And I was like, oh, I'll go show it. It's on the way to the hospital. I pop in and the lady's name's Lisa. And it was a Pop-Tart, right? I didn't know her, but I asked the right questions. I was on my way to the hospital, showed her the house. I ended up doing, let's see how many, I'm going to let somebody in. She bought a house, helped her sell a house. We sold that house and she bought another one. So multiple transactions, all from taking a sign call and going and being a Pop-Tart. But you have to hone your skill, right? You got to ask the right questions. If they won't come into the office and have a consultation with you, that's a red flag that there's probably something not serious about them. Okay, but don't be afraid to go show one house to secure the relationship. Only A buyers deserve my immediate time and attention. Yes, but there's always gray area, right? And so let's say that you get a call from someone that's here visiting this time of year, right? A lot of people come to Phoenix because there's a lot of things happening. So let's say that they're here for, the Phoenix Open and they want to see a house. Well, I might go show them. Because if they say, well, we're thinking about retiring here, we love it, I might go show them a house, even though they're not technically an A buyer, right? Because I might want to do that to secure that relationship so that when they are ready, and I've heard stories of people falling in love with a house, and even though they're not ready, they make an offer because they're going to move mountains to buy that house. And so you just don't know. You have to ask the right questions. Now, an A buyer is a legitimate, loyal, motivated, focused buyer, right? And so those do deserve your immediate time and attention. So you don't want to spend a lot of time with someone who's 2 years out, but you need to spend enough time to secure the relationship. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but so we'll move on to the next set of next slide here. So and again, with the core beliefs, you guys, I would print those out and have them handy so that and in fact, as I've been setting up my home office, I actually came across my old affirmations that used to hang on you probably can't see it because of my virtual background, but this is a sheet of paper that has my affirmations that used to hang right in front of me in my home office. So it's kind of funny that I still have these all these years later, and they're fantastic. So I'm actually thinking, like, where can I put them so I can read them now? Okay, so vital activities. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I have a whole a whole hour class that we dive into just the vital activities. But number 1 and 2 are there for a reason, right? Lead gen, the most critical thing that you do as a real estate agent is generate business, right? I think as a new agent, prospect until you set an appointment. Don't stop, right? Keep going until you set an appointment, because the appointments are what you need to be tracking, right? We're also focused on, I need to sell X number of houses in order to make X number of commission. That's great. That's a number we need to know, but you also need to winnow that down to know, well, how many appointments does that take in order for me to get there? How many people do I need to be eyeball to eyeball with in order to, have those conversations that lead to deals being put in escrow? And then lead conversion. I find the person, now do I know what to say in order to connect with that person? 75% of what you guys do in a real estate, well, what we do in a real estate transaction is defined as a non-money making activity, because it falls under number 3, which is the admin preparation, right? It's all the paperwork that has to be done. That's why we advocate that you work with a transaction coordinator from the very beginning, because that is your assistant, right? Without having the overhead of an assistant. Showing houses, that's kind of the fun part, except for when it's 120 out. Writing and negotiating is my favorite part, right? Getting in there and rolling up your sleeves and putting the deal together. And then the closing preparation, and then post-closing activities. So these are all our vital responsibilities. And again, we have a whole class on that. And if you, on pages 8, 9, and 10 of the materials, it digs into those as well. So you can see, kind of get a preview of what those look like and what we'll be talking about in that particular class. So I'm going to skip through the next slide here. Good morning, Diana. Diana's joined us as well. So key indicators of success. So this is on page 11. So there's things that you want to be tracking, because as an agent, people want to work with someone who can get the job done, right? I had written an offer on Sunday and it didn't get accepted, and I feel really bad, right? It's like she called me afterwards. Is there anything I can do different? And like, no, you really can't just go offer more money and hope that the seller will rescind the other offer. Like, it's not how it works, right? And I hate delivering those phone calls. So, and we went high, like we went in over asking. It was kind of silly, but anyway, and the house was already really, really overpriced. But nonetheless, it's a story for another day. So tracking our key indicators of success, and why is it important? Because agents want to work with or people want to work with agents who can get the job done. So you want to track your percentage of car rights, right, before people find their perfect home, your list price to sales price ratio, your average number of homes that you view or preview each week. Obviously, if you're a 5-star agent and people are happy with you, and then any other testimonials. I also think you could track, and not so much in this market, but track if you're getting closing costs paid, track if you're getting home warranties paid for, track all of that stuff so that, right, I've saved my clients X number of dollars. Again, not so much in this market because we're not seeing that type, but it will change, right? It will change because every market does. And on page 11 at the top there, the mission is to ensure that your buyers that work with you get the home they want and want the home they get. And that's a script, right? Is it, hey, Monica, how would you like to work with an agent who can ensure you get the home you want and want the home you get? And in this market, I think that's a really, really, really powerful statement, because what do you mean I won't get the home I want? Like, I bought this house and it's okay, right? It's not my dream home. So that kind of applies to me too. And I had heard a statistic recently that 40% of home buyers hate the house they bought, but they feel like they had no choice because of the market, right? And so are those people going to be candidates that want to sell? Probably, right? So I'd be making some calls and asking my clients if they like the house they got. So serious buyers take an intentional, proactive, and focused approach, right? And the model that we want is we want to have a collaborative team, right? So this is a win-win between the two of you. And so we have teamwork, right? So your first thing is the approach is having a meeting, right? We want to confirm the status and determine the direction. We want to establish our leverage, which is how much they could qualify for. Do your research, right? Identifying what's the appropriate options that we have. Remain focused and proactive. And then help them to make an informed and intelligent decision, negotiate any repairs, which yes, you can still negotiate repairs, even though the market is crazy. And then closing, helping them realize their aspirations of handing the keys to them. And so the 5 steps, so we're going to dive into what the 5 steps are right now. So the first step is having well, it's not the first step. It's the pre-conversation is the very beginning thing that you do, right? So we want to have them come to office. We want to build rapport, right? So using the Ford script, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. And you guys know that at any of our 3 offices, the people at the front desk, our directors of hospitality, have been trained that if you call in and you say, you know, hey, I have clients coming in, their names are Jim and Sally. When Tiffany sees them come in, she will address them by name and offer them a drink and put them into a conference room. That's a very classy touch. There is no sweeter sound than the sound of your own name being spoken. And so utilize that, you guys, because that's something that we have trained them to do to make you look good, right? So use it, and they're happy to do it. So building that rapport, right? Breaking down. And, you know, when we meet with someone new, it's kind of uncomfortable, right? It's a little bit awkward. So the sooner that you can build that rapport and find a way in, right? Find a way to connect with them. So message one is setting up the win-win. So we have a script on this. What is the win-win? That means that it has to be a win for you and it has to be a win for me, right? And so can we create a partnership where this is a win-win for everyone? And then step two is to help them uncover their needs and wants, prioritize those needs and wants, verify their motivation. You know, they're living with their in-laws and with their pets and kids, and that they may not have a financial driver, right? Like a lease or something like that that's happening, but they will be motivated. I don't know about you, but I don't ever want to live with my in-laws with my pets. So they will be motivated, right? And then check their financial ability, which I love that. I love the way that sounds. Checking their financial ability sounds way better than how much are you qualified for, which, by the way, that has now become an offensive question, right? It's become an offensive question. So you should be slipping back into, will you be paying cash or will you be getting financing? And so that's the better. And it's funny, I said that 25 years ago, and we did it as an icebreaker because people would laugh and go, oh, gee, no, Jan, I don't have cash like that. And it would break down, you know, make a little bit of humor. Well, today you can't make that assumption. There's a whole lot of cash being flown around out there. And with all these companies popping up that are turning your buyers into cash, which, by the way, you should be looking at those programs. There's Ribbon, there's Knock, there's, we just heard from Homelight last week. And who's the other one? I read it in an article. There's several of these programs out there that you should be getting certified in so that when you're talking to people, you have that option to turn them into cash. Okay. So don't be asking about how much they can qualify for. That's now offensive. Okay. So check their financial ability and then create the win-win. And then the post conversation that we want to have is having them do their homework. Oops, I skipped 3, sorry. So step 3, message 3 is covering the mutual expectations, which again, we're going to dive into that next week, and agreeing on those. I think this is one of the most brilliant tools that Momentum provides to you guys. And I really hope that you'll implement it in your buyer conversations. And then having the meeting, close for the meeting. And then our post conversation activities, if they have homework, right? Hopefully they've already talked to a loan officer and that's not a conversation we're having. But if they have not, then that's definitely, I don't put anyone in my car that hasn't talked to a loan officer or who has provided me proof of funds. That's just how I roll. I'm not going to, it's a waste of time, and I'm setting them up for failure, and time is precious, right? And most importantly, I'm setting them up for failure because I can't go to the grocery store if I don't know how much money's in my bank account, right? And so we want to make sure that they are qualified. If they have any other homework that they need to do. And then, of course, getting into showing the homes that meet their criteria and then helping them close for an informed and intelligent offer. Now, I love the MLS. I love the portals. I love how you can set it up and it automatically emails them stuff. But I also think that it's made agents very lazy. Because back when I started selling real estate, my MLS was a big old giant notebook that sat at the front desk. And every morning there was only one board, Phoenix Association of Realtors would fax in the new listings, price changes, and status changes. And my job was to update this book, right? And it was in street order and then alphabetical. So you literally had to come to the office and sift through this book in order to find homes for your property, for your clients. Now we don't have to do that, right? Technology is amazing. And it's amazing how much technology has happened in just 25 years, right? But the problem is we then allow our clients to pick the properties, and we've stopped previewing, right? Because we don't have to. We've got virtual tours and video and all this stuff. The problem is that we are the ones who should know the inventory. We are the ones that should know what's on the market, right? What are the current trends, what's happening? And I will give you a great story about my sister-in-law. They own a house now, but for a while they rented, and they rented for like 5 years. So this property that they lived in, I had sent it to her multiple times, and she kept not wanting to see it. And why? Because the photos sucked. The photos were terrible. And so finally I said to her, I was like, you need to go look at this house. I know that the photos are terrible, but it checks the box of everything that you need right now. They lived there for 5 years. And so I love that story because it's a great example of her looking at the photos and discarding that house. How many of your buyers have done that? Right? Because we haven't taken control of that and said, no, you need to go look at this house. Now, we have to be good listeners, right? We need to be able to read between the lines of what they're saying. And if you are out in the market and you're previewing often, you'll know what's on the market, right? And I know previewing is probably a little hard right now with things flying off the shelves, but you could still go preview new builds and know what's happening there. And we have to listen, right? If they, what are they saying, right? And when I was a buyer's agent on Nate's team, I would always throw in a ringer. And what do I mean by that? One that doesn't necessarily fit what they say they want. But because I was very active in the market and previewing a lot of homes every single week, I would know what was on the market and I would know those little nuances of stuff that was unique about that property. And I have another great story about a lady that she looked like Elvira and he looked like Patrick Swayze. And honestly, I don't even remember their real names. Anyway, so she wanted to be on Arrowhead Lakes, like had to be on the lake. That was her number one criteria. And there were no properties that fit her criteria that were on the lake in her price range. But we had this beautiful listing that if you stood on the balcony and looked over the trees, you could see the lake. But everything else about this house fit her criteria to a T. And they were really big. I mean, their children were super like the focus of their lives. And I said to her, let's just humor me and go look at this house. And what house did they end up buying? That house, right? Because why? Because it fit their family's lifestyle and their children's needs above her desire to have a waterfront property. And so we have to be doing our jobs. And I'm going off on a little tangent about the MLS because it's important that we do, especially today, right? Because someone says, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or I want a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and I need to have a pool. Well, that might not be even possible right now. And so can we do a 3-bedroom and a loft? Could we do a 3-bedroom and a den? What do you really need that 4th bedroom for, right? And winnowing down in that, we have to uncover every rock that's out there for our clients to see if it will work, right? If they can make not a sacrifice, but educating them about what are their options. Okay, so don't be lazy. MLS is a great tool, but let's not be lazy in how we work with our buyers. All right, so meeting in the office. So the phone rings, right? Ring, ring, hi. It's a potential buyer. Let's go be a Pop-Tart, right? And I shared with you, Pop-Tarts can make money. You just got to ask the right questions, right? So instead, we want to maybe, and this is where you can be a Pop-Tart, but remember I said you got to hone your skill. Phone rings as a potential buyer. Get into the process of asking the right questions so that they're not going to chop you up and put you in the trunk of their car, right? Because that's also something we have to be wise about when we get these calls that come in. So asking for the meeting, you will not convert 100% of the leads you do not generate, right? And so here's the script. So are you currently in the market for a new home? Hold on a second, I gotta shut this door. Animals running around here. So are you in the market for a new home? Yes, right? That's their question. So how are you going about finding the perfect home? Then let them answer. They're going to say something. If they're not working with an agent, they're going to say, well, we're going to open houses. We're on Zillow. We're on Redfin. Their answer is going to say something that is not proactive, right? And I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but I do want to read the first part of this. Is how would you like to use a proactive approach or process that will ensure you get the home you want, and more importantly, want the home you get? If you guys take anything away from this class today, please memorize that script. That is a super critical script. And the proactive process is key, right? And anytime you see it bolded and underlined, that's key phrase you don't want to change in there, right? So just getting really comfortable with that, right? So if their answer implies that they're not being intentional, and even if they are working with a realtor, you go to the store, you have the department store, and the employee walks up and says, can I help you with something? What do you typically say? No, thank you. I'm good, right? Buyers do the same thing. Are you working with a realtor? Yes. Everybody knows somebody who's a realtor. They may not actually be working with that person, and they might not be happy with that person, right? And so there's 90,000 people running around. Not all of them are good, okay? And then, of course, what would that entail? What would that process look like? And then you can slip into the script of closing for the appointment, right? And so the dialogue here demonstrates that you're eager to help, right? And I think that that's maybe missing a little bit. And I get it. We're all burnt out, right? We're like, even myself, I was literally trying to talk my client out of making an offer on this house because I knew it was a waste of time. I did it. right? And I did my job, but I felt like it was a waste of time. And I was right. Her offer, we didn't stand a chance. And so, and I tried to educate her about that. And now I've got to go back and I got to figure something out because she wants to move. So I had to figure out a way to get her qualified so that she can not have a contingency, because that was why we didn't get our offer, except she has to sell her property in order to be a cash buyer. So I will figure it out. But, how many of you felt like that, right? You get a new buyer and you're like, oh, I really don't want to buy it right now, right? Because it's so brutal out there, right? But your mindset is everything. And at the end of the day, this is still our job, right? Is to help people. And it's still our job to have a positive attitude about it. If you read the Monday morning message yesterday, kind of focused in on that, because I'm hearing agents saying like, oh my God, the interest rates went up, the market's going to fall, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's freaking out, right? And reality is 6% is still really cheap money. And if people still buy houses, right? They bought houses at 18%, right? And it's still our job to be a champion of the positives and the benefits of being a homeowner. And it's also our job to roll up our sleeves and make it happen, right? Whatever that takes, okay? So page 15, and again, I'm not going to read all these scripts just in lieu of time. So you have a script on how to justify, right? So our time is limited. And so many people say, well, can't you just email me the information, right? Why do I have to do that? And so you need to slip into that consultation place and, talk to them about, this is my job. This is my livelihood. I'm extremely serious about what I do, right? I have a process, and that means I need to get together. And what is your process? It's your buyer consultation, right? And by the way, my buyer consultation is really simple. I don't have a big fancy PowerPoint. I used to. I used to have buyer books, and those are all great things. And talk to the title companies that you work with. They could probably help you create a buyer book. If you want to have a buyer book, that's great. It's something you can give them. But really, what I do is I go through the purchase contracts, line by line, right? Go through everything in there, explain all the pitfalls of what that looks like. And then I go through all the addendums and I get all the addendums signed. So I have them sign an agency, they sign the buyer advisory, they sign the market advisory, they sign all that stuff. And what happens if someone says, have you signed something? Yes. Right. So I go through all those things, I get it out of the way. And I found that one, they need to be educated about the contract. And too many of us nowadays using zip forms and all these online things. Do you think your clients are really reading those documents when you send them over to sign? Probably not. They're just clicking through, right? And so it's our job to go through that. So my consultation, I sit down and I go through the contract and I cover all those pitfalls. We talk about earnest money. We talk about the home inspection. We talk about ways that they could lose their earnest money, right? And then I go through all the addendums. By the time I do that, their eyes have kind of rolled back in their head a little bit. They're a little freaked out, and that now they recognize the reasons that they need a realtor. Okay. So that's my process. It's real simple. Just go through all those things, and it takes about an hour. You answer any questions, and then we slip into, okay, now let's talk about actually looking at homes, right? And getting out into the marketplace. It's not in here, but one thing that I talk about is if they have a list of 10 things that they want in a home, and we find a house that has 7 or 8, it's probably the house that they need to buy, because no house is perfect, right? And so they need to be mindful of that. And in this market, we got to have a little bit of flexibility as well. So building the rapport, again, we talked about family, occupation, recreation, dreams, another great script. You guys already naturally do this in your day-to-day. Think about last time you called your BFF. What'd you say? How's the family? How was work today? What are you guys going to do this weekend? Right? And if you know something about their dreams, you might talk about that as well. So stage 2. So here's the script for the win-win, right? So the foundation of the working relationship. So a lot of real estate agents are willing to sacrifice the win-win just to simply sell a house. I don't operate that way. So it's a win-win with me or no deal. And this is basically leading up to the next few scripts of how do we create the win-win, is creating a relationship partnership type vibe with these people. So the agenda. So again, the heck was that? Using the script, if you get the home you want, and more importantly, want the home you get. So before we get in the car, we want to define what your perfect home is and what your financial parameters are, and then discuss the roles and expectations that we have of each other. And so again, next week, we're going to dive into those. And so setting that up, right? So your financial parameters or your financial comfort zone. I love that, right? Because it makes it sound like I'm not just here to sell you the most expensive house, Chris, right? I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this, because a lot of times what people can qualify for on paper is not actually what they're comfortable paying in a monthly payment, right? So we want to make sure that we are always looking towards what's in their best interest, so that they don't feel like we're just in it for the commission. Okay. as my friend Julie Tim says, having commission breath. So, which is very unattractive. So the confidentiality, I also love this, right? So I want you to know that anything you say here remains totally confidential. If you've ever had to work with a lawyer, having a suit standing next to you makes you feel really comfortable, right? And so it's kind of the same thing, and setting this up and just giving them the space to feel like, hey, I can trust you. I can say whatever I need to say here. And then the transition is that now what we would like to do is move into the next phase, which is phase 3. And phase 3 talks about the criteria sheet, filling that out, right? And then we want to eliminate remorse. And so the worst thing to ever have happen to you is have a conversation with someone where they had remorse about the property that they purchased. I've never had it necessarily happen to me personally on a deal I've sold, but I have interacted with people that have had that experience with a different realtor. And it still hurts my heart, even though it wasn't me involved in it, it still hurts my heart a little bit. So we want to definitely address that. And right now, do we have some buyers having some remorse? Maybe, right? They smell the ether after they get done negotiating, and all of a sudden they're like, oof, I'm not really sure I want to pay $100,000 over asking for this property, right? So that's why we see a lot of cancellation rate right now. And so, it's this is probably more for the listing side of things, but you guys, getting the highest offer is not always the best offer. It's not always the offer that's going to cross the finish lines. And so we have to vet our stuff out, right? And the same thing when you're representing a buyer, you want to make sure that when you present that offer, you're presenting it in the best light, and that you talk about yourself, right? You talk about yourself and what you're going to do to make sure that that property gets across the finish line. Having good communication with the listing agent, I think, is probably the number one thing that you need to be focusing in on to be successful as a buyer's agent. Because if you have bad communication, or you have a disconnect with that listing agent, good luck getting your offer accepted. Okay, so over communicate, be nice to that person, ask them what they need. Is there anything you can do to help, right? And so, having that good communication, and then selling yourself and selling your lender if you're financing. Make sure that the lender calls the listing agent, right? Or at least you offer that. Hey, would you like that? Would you like my lender to call and vet out the buyer? Okay. So the criteria sheet you guys have on page 20, there's a criteria sheet. So the script here is just basically having them fill the criteria sheet out together. I would have them fill it out together. Then that way, if there's 2 people involved in purchasing, it's amazing the differences of opinions that they have, right? And so we want to make sure we have both parties fill that out. And that way they're clear. And if there's any discomfort, it's happening with them in the conference room and not with you in the room, right? So that they can have their discussion about what's the priority. And then, when they're done, right, come back in and talk about what's on the criteria. How have you ever had an experience like that? In the open house class, they talk about giving out the criteria sheet to buyers in your open house. And so do you go out, giving that criteria sheet out to the buyer at an open house. And then that way, when you follow up with them, you could say, hey, did you get a chance to fill out the criteria sheet? Did you find that helpful? And I think that's a really smart thing to do, because who's doing that? Your competition isn't, right? So handing that out to people. So this is a sample of it. You can have it branded to yourself if you want, add your logo on there, or add the RE/MAX logo. You'd certainly make this look a little prettier if you wanted to. Okay, let's see here. Where am I at on stage 4? Okay. I gotta stop telling stories. I'm not going to get through all my stages here. So prioritizing their wants and needs, right? So there's a script for that. So on page 21, a helpful hint is that we want to stay curious, right, about their needs and wants. One of my favorite scripts is just the word "oh," because I can say "oh" in a whole bunch of different ways, right? I can listen happiness, sadness, anger, frustration, all of that, curiosity, right? So just the word "oh." And so, the example says that they need a 3-bedroom, if they want a 4-bedroom, well, how about a 3-bedroom and a study, or an office, or a loft, right? So engage both of them, right? Sometimes we tend to click with one person over the other. So be careful that you're not doing that, right? That you're being neutral with all parties. And it's easy when they are our same personality, it's easy to connect with one over the other. And so we got to be mindful that we're connecting with both. Okay, let's see. I'm just looking at my notes here. So we're not going to role play because we're on Zoom and that's just awkward. But so page 22 is your A buyers, right? So again, we're not going to read the script to you, but there's a script on testing their motivation, right? So when we find a home that meets your needs and the majority of your wants, will there be anything keeping you from making an offer? Again, super critical question, because we need to test their motivation. Where are they at? Right? Are they ready to make an offer? Sometimes people aren't, right? And I think especially your older demographic that's coming into this market that has been homeowners and has dealt with other markets, I think it's really challenging for them to wrap their brain around what's going on right now, right? It's hard for them. I have another buyer I'm working with that, they're struggling, even though they sold their house in California for $100,000 more than what they were asking. So they experienced that, but yet they're struggling here to pull the trigger and make an offer because they're having a hard time wrapping their brain around it. So I think that consultation, and even my sister-in-law the other night was like, oh, I'm so discouraged, I'll never be a homeowner. So of course, I'm like, all right, no, let's have a conversation about this, right? Let me consult you a little bit about the ways that we can still be a homeowner, right? So I think, we just have to constantly be thinking about ways and innovating. That's one thing I love about this industry, is that we always innovate, right? When something happens and a crap storm happens, we figure out a way to get through it, right? We figure out how to still keep people being homeowners. Page 23 is the just looking script, right? So you live in a world of abundance, right? So we want to keep moving on if they say they're just looking. Financial ability. So here's the script for the financial ability. Okay. So are you going to be paying cash or will you be getting a loan? Super critical, you guys, that we stop saying, are you already pre-qualified? Because that has now become offensive. And again, I think the paying cash, the 1 in 10 homes right now are owned free and clear. So there's a lot of cash out there. And so, there's a lot of people sitting in coffee shops trading Bitcoin and being able to pay cash for stuff. So we cannot assume, right? We cannot assume that they can't afford it, or they need financing, rather, is what I meant to say. All right, so stage 4. So stage 4 is the script on addressing any conflict. So it's been my experience that conflict arises only when expectations differ. And so have you ever had an argument with someone in your life when your expectations are different? Right? Absolutely. It happens to all of us, right? Because we make an expectation. Sometimes we don't even verbalize them. Right? They're just rolling around in our head, and our poor friend or spouse has no idea what our expectation is, but all of a sudden we're upset, right? And so, put it out there and deal with it in front, right? So, and we're going to talk about the roles and expectations next week, but this really winnows down on saying, okay, Mr. Buyer, this is what you can expect to me as your realtor, and this is what I expect of you as my partner in this transaction, right? And so it's very brilliant. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because we're going to come back to it next week and dive into that. Stage 5 is in between the meetings, their homework, right? So we want to send them a thank you note. There are some samples in here on page 39, and then create your file. You guys can go ahead and create a file in SkySlope before you have a property. So that way you can start, documenting any communication you have with them in there. You could also, if you've done what I do, you get all your disclosures signed, you can go ahead and get those uploaded so that you're, a step ahead with your contract. I think you can anyway. You might actually, I don't know. I might be speaking out of turn on that. Janice does all my SkySlope stuff, so I might be wrong on that, but I do know you can create a file and at least start storing your communication you're having, so your text and email and that kind of stuff. If they have, so loan officer, if they've come to you pre-qualified, definitely screen that loan officer. It's not my favorite when they come to me having working with someone else. Usually is not a great experience. So I do want to try to refer them to my preferred people if I can. If they haven't got pre-qualified, then obviously that's the first place we want to send them to. And then verify their price, right? What are they comfortable with? So, and again, we don't want to assume that they want to spend it all. And then look at the MLS, right? Look at for sale by owners, look at new builds. I will tell you, you guys know that I bought a for sale by owner that we found on Craigslist. So check those places: Craigslist, Trulia, Realtor.com, Zillow for sale by owners, as much as I don't like saying the word Zillow, but those are tools that are out there that your consumers are looking at. Maybe even Facebook Marketplace, right? And the other thing too on buyers, you guys, that we don't do, we think about our marketing our listings, right? But we don't market our buyers. And so if you have an active buyer right now, jump on Facebook, go on your Instagram, do a TikTok and say, hey, I've got this buyer I'm working with. Who do you know? Did you guys see Danielle's video she did last week? Hey, I got a guy. Loved it, right? That was awesome. And so Danielle, right? And so getting out there and putting, and if you're not comfortable doing a video, at least put a post and just say, hey, I've got a buyer. They're looking for XYZ. If you know of anybody who's thinking of moving, we'd love to chat. Right. The other thing is reverse farming. So going into the MLS and searching for properties, or not the MLS, the tax record. So if you go into, if you know that they want to be an Arrowhead Ranch and they're looking for a 1,500 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you can go into Monsoon and search for that. And then if you want, I have a sample letter that was shared from a guy named Wayne Frederick at a REMAX event last year. Very specific languaging. So if you want it, text me and I'll send, or send me an email and I'll get it to you. Very specific language. It says, this is not a fishing expedition. I have a buyer that's very serious about looking in your neighborhood. And you send that letter out to those would-be sellers, right? And I also heard somebody take this a step further. One idea was the letter plus a copy of their prequal. Of course, black out their names, right? Copy the prequal so you can see that, hey, these guys are legit. Or if you've written an offer in the neighborhood, you got rejected, send a copy of page 1 of that contract to show them that, hey, this was the offer that we made on a home in your neighborhood. So that way they know it's not just you trying to get listings, right? And so the reverse farming, again, that's rolling up our sleeves and doing our jobs for our clients, right? Is getting in and actively searching. So, I know that we have an inventory challenge, right? But again, the more that we say we have an inventory challenge, the more that we create exactly that. And so homes do get listed every day, right? Properties come on the market, they sell. The challenge is that we don't have them sitting on the market long enough to have inventory build up. Now, there's a lot of speculation that we're going to with the interest rates going up. And I haven't talked to my loan officer personally. I have a lunch meeting with her next week, but I had heard from somebody else saying that they think they're going to get up to 6 here pretty quickly. So, which I think is also kind of creating a little bit more of a frenzy with the buyers who are like, oh crap, I didn't think they were going to go up. Now they're at 5. And I think it's important that you guys are aware of what that does to people's affordability, right? Be able to have some talking points around that in a positive light, but also being realistic about that, because I did the math on a $475,000 loan to go from 3.75 to 6. It was about $650 a month difference. That's a car payment, right? That's significant. And so are we going to see some buyers that cannot afford to buy? Absolutely, right? They're going to be sidelined for now. And so, but hopefully that will help with inflation, because y'all know that Arizona's leading the nation in inflation, which is great. We got to be number 1 at something. So last year it was COVID cases and now it's inflation. So hopefully it will mop up some of that. And then, what goes up will come back down, right? It's just that we got super, used to rates being super cheap, right? I mean, geez, what were they, 2.75 at one point during the pandemic, the peak of the pandemic. And so it is a big difference. And so I think we need to still be optimistic and be creative, right? Talk about what are your ARM options, get with your lenders and find out what are your ARM options, and then get familiar with buying down points. Those are all things that we used to do, but we haven't had to do, and there's still things that are available. So that being said, we are going to stop here today, and next week we will dive into the expectations and the roles and talk a little bit more about some more scripts and dialogues. Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
Sarah, you had mentioned that, we should ask people if, they're going to use cash or get a loan. I mean, isn't the next question then going to be, are you pre-qualified? I mean, how are we going to be able to get around that? Is there another term for that?
So yeah, I mean, when they say, I need to get a loan, so great. Have you spoken to a loan officer yet? If they say yes, then great, get the information. If they say no, then I'm happy to refer you to some preferred people that I work with.
Okay.
So yeah. I think it's just the initial question, Jan, that's what's offensive is, are you pre-qualified? So
do you even have money?
Well, and we haven't talked about it. We can talk more about this next week, but we need to talk about what is an appraisal gap. What is a waiver? What are all these things? Why would we shorten our inspection period? So we'll talk more about that next week. And, and I'd love to hear some of the things you guys are doing in the market to be successful in getting buyers' offers accepted. So, and Monica, are you responsible for decorating Rick's office back there?
Yes. Here bright and early yesterday to surprise him.
I don't know that you know this, but I was the person who started that trend in the office.
I remember that on the team, when we were both
Mhm.
on the team, that was the thing. We had
Yep.
to have the supplies. So
Yeah, it was Jennifer Folk's birthday, and she's such a high eye that we had made a big deal out of her birthday. And I actually printed her picture out and put it's my birthday. And they were all over the office. They were in the bathrooms, they were in the kitchen, like they were everywhere. Because the idea is that everyone would go and wish her happy birthday. So
right. And I love
now,
it. I love the concept because I do it now. And it's
Yep.
like, I'm in panic the night before thinking, I need to get to Roberta's desk. I need to get to Rick's desk. Agreed. I love
Yep.
it.
Yeah,
And
so
I stole it.
20 years later, the trend is going strong. So I love it.
It is, but it's that heartfelt kind of, I put the effort in and you're important. So
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely. So, all right, you guys, well, if you need anything, please reach out. Have a fantastic day. Thursday, what do we got Thursday? Toolkit CMA, I believe, on Thursday. So I think that's this Thursday. So, and then we've got some bouge classes and stuff coming up. So definitely. And then I think Shannon's doing something next week too on Skyslip Forms and Breeze. So you probably want to check that out. So, but if you guys need anything, please reach out. Otherwise, have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Sarah.
You too.
Appreciate
Thank you.
See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.